Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for standing by. Welcome to today's session in the ReadyTalk webinar series. We put together the ReadyTalk webinar series with the purpose of building a community where you can interact with experts on a variety of topics to enhance your organization's success and your professional development as well. Today's seminar is entitled How to Turn Your Webinar Series into a Revenue Generator. Today we have Melanie Turk, Research Analyst for Frost & Sullivan, Larry Stern with Educational Research Newsletter and Webinars, and Mary O'Brien from the Internet Marketing Institute. Before we start, I'd just like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. However, we encourage your questions or comments at any time through the chat feature located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. We will leave plenty of time at the end to queue all your questions up for the speakers after the presentation, so please feel free to chat them in as you think of them. If you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk after today's event, please remain on the line for just a few moments and we'll pass along some additional information. As a reminder, this web seminar is being recorded today, and you will receive a link to the recording later as well as the presentation in a post-event email. With that said, I'd like to turn it over to Melanie Turk to start us off today. Melanie?
Thanks, Mike. And my name is Melanie Turk. I'm an Industry Director with Frost & Sullivan, and I am going to kick things off by kind of giving a high-level overview of online events and why it is we think a good opportunity now, a good time now, to start thinking about how we can turn webinars into revenue-generating events rather than simply free events, which of course most of you are probably familiar with on some level. I think one of the biggest reasons why we're in a good place right now to do that is because of some changes that we're seeing overall in the business world today and really in the consumer world as well, where we have an increasingly growing number of people working in locations that are different from a headquarters office or even a large kind of remote site. We've got more and more people who are working from home offices, part-time or full-time, or small regional offices, certainly people working from the road a lot more. And what that means is that these people are being given access to technology that lets them interact with one another, with their partners, with their customers online. Right? So web conferencing is usually a pretty big part of that tool set. And what that means is that people are more and more accustomed to doing business online certainly, but also really interacting with people through web conferences and other online technologies, getting information that way, whether it's through chat again or a conference kind of scenario. And what that means is they're just more receptive to that idea. And that's important as you start to think about offering a product that's kind of geared toward this type of distribution rather than, say, a free service. A couple of years ago, we talked a lot about how free events could do various things for your organizations. Very often had to kind of convince people that was a good thing. And now we're sort of taking it to that next level. We're also finding that people are really in need of education and training today more than they've ever been. And so they're eager to get content and information, whether it's just kind of hands-on around a particular software technology, or whether it's maybe more general about their industry, trends, market forecasts, things like that, or maybe it's best practices for their particular job role, or again their particular business. Because the marketplace has gone so global so quickly, because companies are finding themselves in competition with organizations they may never have encountered just a few years ago, again thanks in large part due to the Internet. One of the things that really can help them distinguish themselves and help employees distinguish themselves within their own organizations and in the larger market is having that information, that access to training and education and best practices. So that's more important than ever. And obviously what we're really talking about here is changing the delivery, not the business model, right? I mean, paid events have been offered for a very long time, whether it's industry conferences or specific regional events that are dealing with large topics, or even smaller sessions that are meant to be very educational and training in nature. those have been happening for a very long time, where people are willing to pay to attend in person those kinds of sessions. So what we're really talking about here is not so much, hey, why do people want to pay for this kind of content, but how can we get them to understand that getting it over the internet has just as much, if not more value than getting it in person in a lot of ways. So when we're talking about web conferencing, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I'm guessing most people on this call are familiar with the technology, so I'll go through this very quickly. Obviously, we're using a web conferencing tool right now, and I am delivering a web-based presentation, so that should be fairly self-explanatory. But a lot of times, too, you're going to use these tools to share applications, files, take people to other websites, things like that. Very important use case if you're looking at training, again, or even education, where you want people to be able to really kind of get their hands on a particular application or file, be able to annotate documents, mark things up. You also want to enable sidebar chats. Some of you may be participating in those right now during this session, but the idea is that you can talk either privately to one or more members of the group, or publicly to the whole team. And then, of course, you want it to be interactive, so you can have questions and answers, polls, surveys, so you get some feedback from your audience. And finally, recording and archiving, very important. Being able to record the event, archive it online so that attendees or even non-attendees can go back and revisit that recording, get information they may have missed, or sort of refresh their memories on things. Overall, what we're looking for here is increasing your reach while lowering your costs, helping you to deliver really customized presentations, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, and then the ability to follow up anytime, anywhere. Now, there are a couple ways typically that web conferencing is used, and this is important as you start to think about offering web events on a sort of paid basis, if you will. The first use case is one-to-many, and that's sort of what we're doing right here. I mean, it could be a few people to many, which is what we're doing today, but the idea is that, sort of mimicking a large conference room, ballroom type of environment. This is a really good use case if, for example, you're trying to virtualize an event that might be an industry event that typically takes place at a large conference center with hundreds or thousands of attendees. Then you can also, of course, use web conferencing for what we call one-to-few or few-to-few engagements. And what you're doing there is really more along the lines of an interactive, kind of iterative session, if you will. So, you're a lot more opportunity for that personal interaction, but also you're kind of hoping, hey, participants kind of become presenters some of the time. They contribute their ideas, their own best practices. They're very involved in terms of asking questions or raising challenges or concerns or whatever it may be, depending on the topic. Again, another very good way to use the technology when you're delivering paid-for webinars, because as we talk in a minute about targeting some of these web events to very specific niche audiences, you may only have 12 or 15 attendees, but you can make it a very personal and very valuable experience for them.